Multiplier coming to him on the outside. It's Hedge Fund. Multiplier surging on the outside. Multiplier on the outside. Very tight. Hedge Fund in a very tight photo. It's your nickel third.
So there it is, the end of the exciting Illinois Derby. I'm David Kaplan. He's Jim Miller. This is the Xpress Bet Racing Report. Multiplier wins the race, and my guy Jim Miller, that's who he gave out on the show. You hit the winner. Good call.
And that's the thing about it. We took a shot at a price there. We knew Hedge Fund was going to take a whole lot of money, and Hedge Fund did. Multiplier paid over $10, so I put 100 on the nose. We're building our bankroll, and we're building it for today, Cap. This is the reason why.
Yeah, I was on Hedge Fund and thought I was going to hang on.
You were
and
home
win the
free,
race.
I thought
I had it.
Eighth of a mile to go, you were home free. You had a 3-length lead, a horse that had experience, and a horse that was still running on. Both of these horses, though, Multiplier and Hedge Fund, have big careers ahead of them. One of them may pop up in the Preakness or Belmont Stakes, so we'll see. We're going to see who's going to be taking them on here as the Derby's taking place later today.
All right, so today is a great day in horse racing. It's also just a great day in sports. Even the casual fan loves to go out and say, you know what? I'm going to throw some money on, I'm going to sit back, and I'm going to watch the races. It should be a lot of fun today.
It's the greatest 2 minutes in sports, and it is so for a reason. You have over 150,000 people on site in Louisville at Churchill Downs, millions and millions of people watching, and everything kind of culminates in this race. All these prep races across the country, 20 horses here going into the starting gate. There were 22 entered for the race. There were horses waiting out in the wings wanting to get in. And the best thing about this Derby this year, there has been no dominant horse. Your favorite will probably be somewhere around 5-1. So even if the favorite wins, it's going to pay $12. But I'm telling you, there are 20, 30, 40, 50-1 shots that are all in with the shot this year in the Derby.
And all believe they have a shot to win the Derby. That's the amazing thing. You know, sometimes they'll say, well, if we get the perfect trip. I remember Mind That Bird just stayed on the rail, and everybody seemed to move over, and Calvin Borel, or Calvin Borel, as they like to call him, gone, and you go, whoa, what just happened? The horses today at long prices, they truly believe we can win this race.
Yeah, and the thing about it, these horses at long prices, because you've had to earn those Derby points to get in, these are graded stakes placed horses. It's not like a horse that threw out a fluke 4th and 5th place finish and, oh, we just happened to get in the race. You had to earn your way into this race, and because so, you've raced against the best horses in the country, the best 3-year-olds. You're here for a reason. But some horses are just going to be overlooked in a 20-horse field, and that's the reason why we will see some big prices and some big prices that are factors later today.
Yep, and a chance to make money. All right, let's start with the top of the board, Jim. Let's go through these horses, and we'll break them up throughout the show. Looking at Lee is a horse some people feel, you know, really long odds. But this is a horse that feels like, you know what, we can be at that horse on the rail and get a shot.
Yeah, and usually the rail is a death wish in the Derby. But the one thing about looking at Lee that helps is the horse is a closer. So doesn't have to really try to get position early on. Probably just kind of flops out of the gate, settles at the back of the pack. This is the horse that needs the Mind That Bird kind of trip to win, though. Probably not a horse that I'll use in the mix, but you never know. Steve Asmussen, the guy's won so many races. Corey Lannery knows this track at Churchill Downs. Looking at Lee will just settle back and try to get that ground-saving trip the whole way around.
All right, Thunder Snow is in the 2-hole. You're talking about another double-digit long shot at 20-1 in the morning line.
Yeah, and this was the question mark coming out of that race in the UAE Derby. The horse didn't know if they were going to skip the Kentucky Derby or not. They decided a couple of weeks ago, we're going to take a shot. The horse did ship well, handled quarantine well. Lasix for this race too, so you never know with Thunder Snow. Again, the dreaded inside post is a little bit of a concern, but this is a horse that could be a player at a little bit of a price.
All right, Fast and Accurate. Now, this is the longest of the first 3 that we're previewing. Fast and Accurate, a 50-1 shot, and a horse some people are throwing in their exotics. I haven't had this horse in my field.
I haven't either, but here's the thing. The owner, Kendall Hansen, said, we're going for the lead. So there's not a whole lot of pace in this race. They're going to send this horse away. And this was a horse that was not Derby nominated. They had to pay the supplemental fee. So you're paying a substantial amount to get into this race for a reason. But Fast and Accurate will be a huge price.
All right, let's go through 4, 5, and 6 here. You've got Untrapped, Always Dreaming, and State of Honor. And again, Always Dreaming at 5-1, but the other 2 long shots.
Yeah, and Untrapped is a horse that is actually kind of interesting to me a little bit. If the track comes up sloppy later today and there is rain in the forecast in Louisville, a horse like Untrapped could be a factor. Again, a Steve Asmussen horse. You get Ricardo Santana back in the saddle. This horse has had the best success with Santana aboard. They take the blinkers off, so maybe they want the horse to relax a little bit more. But Untrapped really wouldn't surprise me at a huge price.
All right, Always Dreaming 5-1, and State of Honor, who a friend of mine, Doug Nackman, big on State of Honor, but real quick, Always Dreaming and State of Honor.
Yeah, let's look at Always Dreaming's last race in the Florida Derby. That was that victory. It was the first time out against Stakes Company, and you watch Always Dreaming stalking the pace into the lane there. This horse extended really nicely, and while everybody was watching Gunnevera waiting for that horse to move, it was Always Dreaming that just kind of shook the field late in the lane, ran on late. Wouldn't surprise me. I expect him to show speed. He's had some nerves, though, leading up to today's race, so we'll see what we get out of Always Dreaming. And then State of Honor, a little bit of a wild card here. This is a horse that ran second to Always Dreaming, has some speed, and really wouldn't surprise me if this horse is a bit of a pace factor in the Derby.
Yeah, I see that horse out front saying, I'm going to try and steal this race.
Yeah, and it really could do so. We saw War Emblem do it, an Illinois Derby winner, not too long ago, and really, this is one thing about a 20-horse field. There's not a whole lot of speed in there, so there is a potential for someone to make the top and never look back.
All right, we'll take our first time out. We'll come back, run through another group of Derby horses. It's the best day in racing. It is Kentucky Derby Day. We're taking you through the entire field, and then we'll tell you who we're going to play, who Eddie Olczyk's going to play. It's all coming up. Xpress Bet Racing Report from Hawthorne outside Chicago here on CSN.
At Xpress Bet, we celebrate the champions who make horse racing great. That's why we provide more ways to bet from more places than ever. We've built an entire family of brands to support horse racing, to give players more of the rewards they deserve, give bettors the information they need to win, and provide a community for horse bettors. Because the best way to support the champions of horse racing is to champion horse racing. Xpress Bet. We are racing.
Welcome back on the Xpress Bet Racing Report on CSN. He is Jim Miller. I'm David Kaplan. We're taking you through the Derby field. Later today, the Run for the Roses down in Kentucky. It should be a lot of fun, all the pageantry. It's my favorite racing day of the year. Love the Preakness, love the Belmont, love the Breeders, love the Illinois Derby. Like it all because that's my passion like you. But today is special.
Yeah, nothing beats the Derby. I mean, you have so many people on site there at Churchill Downs. It's a huge crowd. It's not a big paddock there either, so many people surrounding the horses.
Tiny.
To fit 20 horses in there is insane. But that's one of the things that you have to really watch, and watch the great coverage of the Derby because it's out there all over the place. Look for nerves for these horses. Look and see who's behaving. And a lot of these horses have been schooling in the paddock leading up to this race, just trying to get kind of used to what they're going to expect. But you really don't know until you get there on Saturday. If you have rain in the forecast, that switches things up a little bit, and we'll see how it plays out.
All right, let's go through horses 7 through 13. Let's start with Gervin. This is a horse that had the most Derby points and a lot of acclaim. Just doesn't seem to get any love from the handicappers.
Yeah, and the thing about it is everybody says, well, there's all these what-ifs with Gervin. Race set up perfectly for him 2 races back in the Risen Star. In the Louisiana Derby, trainer Joe Sharp sent out a rabbit for Gervin to ensure a quick pace in that race. And then after that, the horses missed some training time leading up to the Derby, and that's the concern. They're worried about a quarter crack in the hoof. The horse has worked in a bar shoe, has been swimming coming up to the race, and people are questioning the fitness of Gervin coming into this race. You're seeing 15-1 in the morning line. It really wouldn't surprise me if that price trickles up a little bit.
They also questioned the health of Secretariat before he won the Derby.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about it. And that's the reason why a horse like Gervin could sneak off at a little bit of a price. He's a horse that needs pace to run at, and then we'll have to see what the pace is. But Gervin will settle back early on, should be flying late. We'll see what the trip is. But, hey, you're picking up a Hall of Fame jock and Mike Smith in the saddle. Remember Giacomo? Who rode Giacomo? Mike Smith. Exactly.
All right, let's talk about Hence in the 8-hole. 15-1 in the morning line, and has history winning on a wet track, which it could be wet in Kentucky.
Yeah, this horse won at Oaklawn Park in the slop. You go to the race in the Sunland Derby, and we're going to go back and look at the stretch run of that race because Hence really ran a nice race. And the initial speed figures, the initial buyer figures were somewhere in the 80s. They've since modified those figures. This horse got a 97 buyer speed figure in that race. But you look at Hence's race, was at the back of the pack early, then all of a sudden just a huge move in a matter of a quarter of a mile. And look who's come out of that race. We talked about Conquest Mo Money leading up to this race. They're not in the Derby. They're going to be a player in the Preakness possibly. Hedge Fund, the horse that ran second in the Illinois Derby. IRAP, who ran 4th in this race, won the Bluegrass. This is the wise guy horse, and hence I think will actually take a little bit more action than his morning line.
How about that one? All right, let's talk about IRAP. You liked that horse earlier in our show season.
Right. Yeah, and I liked him a lot. I liked him in the Sunland Derby when he ran fourth, and he ran into a little bit of a troubled trip there. So you know what they did? They sent the horse to Keeneland in the Bluegrass, and we'll take a look at his race in the Bluegrass. They didn't mess around with sitting behind horses or anything. They said, we're going to go to the front. And this was a horse that was still there at the end. And you see Practical Joke, who's in the Derby, was in that race. Mccracken, who a lot of people like, was finishing third in the Bluegrass. IRAP never came back to the field. And that horse was a maiden going into that race, a maiden no more, though.
Yeah, maiden no more at a big price.
Exactly.
All right, let's go to the 10, Gunnavera. Now, this was a horse at one point you and I thought on one of our earlier shows, this could be the Derby favorite.
Right.
Just hasn't achieved at the level everyone thought.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. And you look at Gunnavera, I mean, this was a horse that won the Fountain of Youth, was a heavy favorite in the Florida Derby, was the even money favorite in the Florida Derby, and then just didn't get the pace to run at in there. And we're going to go back and look at his race in the Fountain of Youth. And in that race, Gunnavera settled back early on, came rolling at him late. He'll need some pace to run at here, but he's a horse that's proven on a wet track. He's finished second on a wet track before and could be a little bit of a factor.
All right, another horse that's won on a off-track, wet track, Battle of Midway. And that is a horse that you like a lot.
And I'll be talking about this horse when our selections come up near the end of the show. And the thing about Battle of Midway, the speed figures don't look huge, but this was a horse that had the maiden breaker on an off track. And if you look back at the race of the Santa Anita Derby, which we'll touch on a little bit later, he did all the heavy lifting in that race, set the pace, pushed the entire way around. He was still there at the end. He could be an up-and-coming horse, I'm hoping, at least in the Derby.
All right, Sonneteer has had some success here in the spring.
Yeah.
And in talking with my buddy Yurko today, he's got friends who are tight with the owner connections.
Okay.
They believe Sonneteer ready to run his best race.
And it wouldn't surprise me. He's going to need his best race in the Derby. He's still a maiden. A maiden has never won the Derby, but here's the thing about Sonneteer. He settles back early on. He runs on late every single time. Even if you don't like him to win, you may want to put him in your gimmicks because he's going to be a huge price. He's 50-1 in the morning line.
All right, and finally, let's talk about J. Boy's Echo. This is a 20-1 horse and does not have any history of doing well on a wet track, which, again, rain is there now. Hopefully, by the end of the day when we kick this race off, the track will be okay.
Yeah, and I don't know what we're going to get out of J. Boy's Echo because this was a horse that in the Gotham 2 races back, you looked at that race, he came absolutely flying, ran by, posted a gigantic number in that race, and then kind of bounced in the Bluegrass. They thought he was going to be okay and just kind of raced evenly around, got beaten 7 lengths in there. Could be a wise guy horse. He's 20-1 in the morning line. Make note, though, Robbie Alvarado, his normal rider, got hurt, so he's going to have a new jock in Luis Saez for the Derby.
All right, if Yurko likes him and the wise guys like him, it might be something worth throwing a couple of dollars on. All right, we'll take a time out. We'll come back, take you through the next grouping of horses that are entered in the Kentucky Derby. You're watching the Xpress Bet Racing Report. We'll be right back on CSN.
In the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Either way, you win. Have a stake in the race with Xpress Bet.
We continue with the Xpress Bet Racing Report. He's Jim Miller. I'm David Kaplan. We are at Hawthorne. Ren Carruthers, throughout our spring preview leading up to the Derby, has been our pedigree and breeding expert, and she files this report on the Derby. Ren?
It is time to talk Derby. Over the past few weeks, you've heard me go over some of the contenders' pedigrees in depth, so I'll try to keep this relatively short and sweet. When picking your Derby horse, it's a combination of having seen impressive ability on track and then looking at the family tree and finding a genetic tapestry that indicates that this horse can carry that turn of foot over 1.25 miles. Despite being the favorites, I can't resist a bad boy. So my top Derby pick is Classic Empire, whose name reflects the pedigree.
Here comes Classic Empire.
His daddy is Pioneer of the Nile, who was second in the 2009 Kentucky Derby and then went on to sire our first Triple Crown hero in 37 years, American Pharoah. His dam sire is Cat Thief, who was third in the 1999 Kentucky Derby before going on to win the Breeders' Cup Classic that same year. I love the combination of stamina with the speed influence of Milwaukee. And as I've mentioned before, Classic Empire's female family is the same as Bold Nesian, the sire of Bold Reasoning, who's the sire of Triple Crown hero Seattle Slew. As for my second pick, Irish Warcry, a son of two-time Horse of the Year Curlin. Curlin won at the mile and a quarter distance multiple times, including the Breeders' Cup Classic, the Dubai World Cup, and the Jockey Club Gold Cup twice. Irish Warcry is another colt with a nice balance of stamina and zip, as his dam sire is Polish Numbers. Rounding out my top three, Mccracken. The bluegrass performance did nothing to sway my opinion of this son of Ghost Sapper, a horse who could truly carry his brilliant speed over the mile and a quarter classic distance. McCracken's dam sire is multiple Grade 1 winner Seeking the Gold, who was second in the 1988 Breeders' Cup Classic to Ali Sheba. And furthermore, his second dam is by Wild Again, who won the first running of the Breeders' Cup Classic. However you play this weekend, good luck. And now we throw it back to Cap and Jim in the studio.
Thank you very much, Ren. She likes a couple of really good horses, but shorter prices than maybe you and I are willing to go.
Yeah, and a race like this, I'm not betting the shorter prices. Now, she knows her stuff. She's looked at all the lines, the sire lines, the dam, everything breeding-wise. She does know her stuff. So these are horses you do have to use. And really, I mean, you're focused on Classic Empire, Irish Warcry, and McCracken. And the cool thing about it, you're still looking at $10, $12, $15 type of horses. But for us, we're going big or going home.
Yeah, we're going big or going home. Absolutely. All right, let's move to our next grouping of horses in today's Kentucky Derby. And we're going to start with the next one is Classic Empire, the 14-hole. Right. This is the favorite right now. Yeah. May not go off that way, but that's what it certainly looks like at 4-1. Has success on a wet track, and that wet track was at Churchill.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the first race for Classic Empire, but this is the reigning 2-year-old champion. But this was a horse that had some issues, missed a little bit of training early in this year, and had to get some points to get into this race. Fortunately, they got those points in the Arkansas Derby, but the way I saw it, I thought it was a dream setup there. He had a contested pace ahead of him, and when he's making that move, and it was a dream move that we saw, came right down the center of the track, clear as could be. My concern for him here, 20-horse field now, and a horse that's going to take so much money. If I'm going to use him, I'm going to pair him up with some horses at some big prices.
Yeah, it's a horse that could get caught up in traffic, and you go, what happened?
Right. And that's the thing about him. And when you're looking at this horse, Julien Leparoux knows this Churchill track very well, but you're still looking at 20 horses. There's so many unknowns. He may not get 4 horses ahead of him that are setting a really brisk pace. And if he gets shuffled a little bit further back than expected, it could be pretty tough on Classic Empire.
Yep, with that size field. All right, 15 is the horse that I like best in this field. It is Mccracken, 5-1 in the morning line, but it's a horse that has had injury problems and has not proven that it could stay healthy. This odds at the time that this race goes off should be somewhere 6, 7, 8, 9-1.
That's what I would expect. I think the 5-1 morning line was a little bit short on McCracken here. I do expect that those prices are going to come up. You look at the race in the Sam F. Davis, it was a great race. It looked like Tapper was standing still when he ran by that horse and really ran onto a big effort. But then you had the foot injuries. You had some time away from the track. Came back in the bluegrass, and the question is, was that just kind of trying to get a prep and get a race under his belt to be ready for this spot? If it was, he could be the goods today.
Yeah, he could be the goods, but again, there's a lot of question about it, and that's why he's not the favorite. All right, let's move on to 16. Tappert, also experience on and off track as a winner. This is a 20-1 horse.
Yeah, and he's probably going to go off higher than 20-1 in this spot, I expect. He does have that win in the slop, but like I mentioned, if people like McCracken and McCracken's going to be somewhere from 8 to 10-1, you can't expect Tappert to be 20-1 because McCracken blew him away when those two faced off. Now, Tappert had a beautiful setup in that race in the Tampa Bay Derby, but again, in the bluegrass, he was nowhere to be seen. He was beaten by 11 lengths. For me, I'm going to stay away from him. If it is sloppy, maybe he moves up a little bit on my list, but I think everything will have to work out perfectly for him to win.
All right, a couple of horses at shorter prices, one shorter than the other. Irish Warcry in the 17 hole. Gormley in the 18.
Yeah, and people are saying Irish Warcry could end up going off as the favorite in this race. This was a horse that's kind of the up-and-comer. 2 buyer figures over 100, and he's the only horse in the field that you see that from. So that's the one thing about Irish Warcry. The knock on him early in his career was that he couldn't rate. He could only go out there and show speed. But then you go back and look at that last race in the Wood Memorial. He sat right off the pace. Perfect trip, and when he was asked to go, boy, did he go. He responded nicely and ended up winning by almost 4 lengths.
All right, let's talk about Gormley. That is a horse that's won on a slower track.
Right, and I like Gormley, and everybody's going to knock the final time of the Santa Anita Derby because it was so slow, and Gormley did get a dream setup there, but here's the thing. Look who's in the saddle. It's Victor Espinoza. This is a guy who's won 3 derbies recently. He's not going to shy away from it. He's not going to be concerned about the 20 horses here, and Gormley with that win on a wet track may be a factor, and I think he'll probably go off a little higher than 15-1 also.
All right, last couple. Practical Joke is going to go off probably somewhere in the 30, 35-1 range.
Yeah, not a bad effort in that last out at Keeneland. Finished second in there, but that was pretty much a dream trip for him. Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing about it. Practical Joke may be a little bit of an outside shot.
All right, last one. Patch is going to go off north of 40-1.
Yeah.
Patch lost an eye as a 2-year-old.
Right, and that's the thing about it that's weird. It's his left eye that he's missing. You look at him, there's just a gap there. No eye there, and everything's filled in. But you're in the 20 hole. You can't see the 19 horses to your inside, so I'm really curious what kind of trip Patch is going to get. I left him out there. He's lightly raced. I think he would need a monster effort if he's to hit the board.
So this is a horse you would leave out no matter how high the odds
I'm going to leave Patch out. I mean, you look at the Louisiana Derby again. You had a dream trip there for Gervin. Patch also got that same dream trip, and Gervin ran right on by late. I'm going to stay away from Patch.
All right, we'll take our last time out. We'll come back. We'll tell you how you can make some money. Don't forget, you're sitting at home and you go, you know what? I want to win some money today. Xpressbet.com. Tons of promotions, tons of bonuses. You log on, create the account, fund it, and you can be gambling this afternoon on the Derby with us.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, there's so much potential here. It doesn't take a whole lot of money to put through the windows to make a big score, though, either. A couple of these long prices. You could see 50-cent trifectas paying in the thousands. Superfectas can pay in the tens of thousands very easily on this race.
Well, we all know a former hockey player who put, I think, 160 into a pick 6 and walked away with $500,000.
Yeah, and that's all it takes. You just need to hit a couple of horses here. Take a horse. You like a horse here? Stand by that horse. Pair up a few horses around it. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money, and you can make a really big score.
All right, XpressBet.com. We'll take a time out. We'll give you our picks. That's coming up next here on CSN.
At XpressBet, we celebrate the champions who make horse racing great. That's why we provide more ways to bet from more places than ever. We've built an entire family of brands to support horse racing, to give players more of the rewards they deserve, give bettors the information they need to win, and provide a community for horse bettors. Because the best way to support the champions of horse racing is to champion horse racing. XpressBet. We are racing.
All right, it's that time here on the XpressBet Racing Report. We are going to give you our picks. We've handicapped a lot, looked at this race from all the different perspectives, and try and make you some money. But again, you go to XpressBet.com and you can bet the Kentucky Derby right on your computer at home, watch the race on TV, and have a whole lot of fun with it. Yep. Eddie Olczyk said to me he likes the same horse I like, Mccracken. You are on a long shot.
Yep.
Doug Nackman, my friend, who's a handicapper, is on a real,
long shot.
Yeah, he's on State of Honor. Yeah. That horse is going to go off north of 50-1.
I would think so, but you know what? Here's the thing about it. State of Honor has speed. And because of that, if you're going to be on the front end at some point, you're always in with a shot. The problem is if you're coming from well out of it, you need things to work out really nicely. So I can totally see the logic behind the selection of State of Honor, and weather really will be a factor in this race. If this track comes up sloppy, it's going to favor some horses. If it's a drying out track, favors others. If it's just a straight on fast track, changes the complexion of the race also.
Yeah, I remember the night before Giacomo won, and I had Doug on, and he said, I'm playing Giacomo. And a friend of mine who was on hold, I was just going to put him on the air, Dave Abrams, said, let me pick myself up off the floor after I heard that pick. That horse has no shot, and we know how that worked out.
Yeah, and the thing about Giacomo, you got a heated pace in front of him that day. Mike Smith did everything right, and then all he did, he stayed out of the way of everybody. He circled around the field, was able to come right down the center of the track, and had a ton of horse late. But we've seen in the past horses like Grindstone have won that way. Giacomo won that way. I mean, Orb was out in the center of the track when that horse won. So that may be the place to look. And that's one thing you have to do when you're watching this Churchill track during the day, especially if it's drying out. See which is better, if the inside's good, if the outside's good, because these jocks are going to be watching and have to adjust.
All right, so I am going to put my money, my $100, on Mccracken. I'm not going to mess around with exotics. I am placing it all, and I think I'm going to get 8, 9, 10 to 1 on Mccracken.
And I think you will get 8, 9, or 10 to 1 on Mccracken because of the unknowns in that race. This was a horse that was the now horse after that win in the Sam F. Davis. Then you have some time off because of injury, come back in the Bluegrass, and it wasn't a terrible race by any means. The horse ran third to a horse that wired the field and IRAP in there. But I do think you'll get a good price. We go through some of the picks of the Xpress Bet TV host. Aaron Veracruz picked Mccracken as well. He likes that horse. Edzo likes that horse. So a horse like Mccracken definitely worth a shot. But here's the thing about it. Even if he's 8 to 1, think about it. Okay, he pays $18 to win. You put 100 on the nose. There's 900 right there for you. So why not take that shot there?
Yeah, take a shot, I think, on a really good horse who has a few questions, so I'm going to get more value.
Yeah.
You, though, are going way off the board. Long shot, bomb, call it whatever you want. If your horse hits, Battle of Midway, you're buying a new car.
Why not? Swing for the fences here, and that's what I'm going to do in this race. Battle of Midway ran in the Santa Anita Derby. He was the horse on the inside. He was battling the fractions the entire way around with 2 other horses to his outside. He was still there at the end, and that's the thing about it. Gormley was the only horse that caught him late, and Battle of Midway hadn't stopped running by any means. Now, I talked to the assistant for Jerry Hollendorf, for the trainer, and he said, let it rain. Hope it rains and doesn't stop raining. And the one thing he told me, he said, when this horse hits the top of the stretch and the field hits the top of the stretch, Battle of Midway is going to be there. The question is how he handles that last quarter of the mile. Breeding suggests he can handle it. This is a horse that has smart strike in the breeding lines. He can handle 2 turns. So I'm not too worried about him there. I think you have to use Gunnevera. I do think you have to use Classic Empire. And then Untrapped is my question mark. This was a horse that was 6 wide the entire way in the Arkansas Derby. You get rid of that race and look at the prior races, and they were all pretty decent. And Untrapped probably going to be somewhere around 40 to 1 in the race.
All right, so Jim's going to go with Battle of Midway with those long shots. So you've got 11 over the 4, 10, and 14.
Right.
I am going to go straight on Mccracken. Eddie Olczyk's doing the exact same thing. And as I told you, Doug Nachman's going with State of Honor, the 6. You and Doug are both going to have north of 50 to 1.
Yeah, and why not take a shot in a race like this? There's 20 horses. There's going to be a lot of bumping, a lot of jockeying for position early on. Again, track conditions can be a factor there too. Somebody is going to get that dream trip. Someone will emerge on top in the end. But because there's no standout superstar in this race, you could very easily see at the top of the stretch 15 horses within 5 or 6 lengths of each other. And it's just going to be who gets through in the end and is able to hold on late.
All right, there you have them. We hope you make some money. We hope you have fun today gambling on the races. You can do it right at your computer at expressbet.com. For our great crew here at Hawthorne, for Jim Miller, for Ren Carruthers, Eddie Olczyk, I'm David Kaplan. We will see you next week as we look back on the Derby and get you set for the Preakness. Good luck.